Hey, this is Mike, and in part 2 of our farming series, I'll be looking at how to plant and use the Gridness Farming Light Pack, the free asset to set up a farming system where we will buy seeds, plant the seed that we bought, water the seeds, harvest from the plant that grows tomatoes, put the tomatoes in a crate, picking up the crate and carrying it to a loading zone. And for this, we will be using our own design for the growing system rather than a paid asset. This will be using free assets in Game Creator 2 logic to do the growing and watering system. I'll be using the Gridness Studios Light Farm Pack, the hand-painted grass and ground textures, and Kevin Iglesias human animations, along with Game Creator 2 core and inventory modules. So with that said, let's get started. All right, so now we're going to look at farming with the free assets, and it's going to be more of a chain design here. So we're going to basically start from one side and work our way through this chain. If you want to watch a good video about chains versus game loops, you can check out this video right here. It's good. So this chain is going to be these farming chains. So we're going to buy some seeds from a vendor. We're going to plant those seeds. Then we're going to have to water them. And then we wait for them to grow. As a result of watering it, it grows. And then as a result of growing, it becomes harvestable. Then we're going to be able to harvest those crops. And once everything is been harvested, it will be depleted. And once we have the crops, it'll be in our inventory. And we'll be able to load that into an empty crate. And as a result of that, the crate will become full. And then at that point, we'll be able to pick up the crate and carry it to a loading zone, which will be the end of the chain for this demonstration, for this tutorial. So that's what we're going to do in this part of the video. And for that, I have created a small, instead of just a regular grid, I created a small terrain, a 100 by 100 terrain, using the tree that comes with the Gridness farming, the free farming pack that we're using. This tree came with it, as well as some free textures. The hand-painted grass and ground textures you can get for free on the asset store. But if you want to see how I set this scene up, you can take a look at this video. Okay, so now that we have our scene, we can bring in our game creator character first. So that's going to be, we're going to bring in, and of course the first part of the chain is to buy seeds from a vendor. So let's bring in a vendor. Merchants from the inventory examples. We'll take the merchant list and drag him in. And he comes in with his cart already set up. So we'll put him right there. And for him, he's all set up and ready to go. All we have to do is create some seeds for him to actually sell. And for that, we're going to figure out, well, what is it that we're going to grow first? So let's look at the Gridness Studios Light Farm Pack and see what we get in this pack. We get, if I do this and see what we get and what we're going to use, I'll just drag out everything we're going to use. We're going to use this dirt patch, and we're going to use this empty crate. And what else are we going to use? Let's see. We are going to use a tomato plant. So we've got the seeds here. And then we've got a few stages of growth. So we can bring those out and take a look at those. And there we go. What else do we have here? This is before that one. Just try to organize all the stages that we have. It does come with several stages of growth here. So first we have the seed. Then we have this one, that's 2. Then we can go to this one, this one. Then we can, well, this one really doesn't have any. This could be our depleted state, because it goes from having tomatoes on it to having 6 tomatoes, and it wouldn't make sense if this came between those two. So let's just, okay, so and then move that. And then this will be our depleted state. So once we picked everything, it'll just sit there as a plant. So that's what we're going to set up to grow. So in other words, we need these seeds to be created so that the vendor can sell them to us. So let's create an inventory item called seeds. Inventory item. Tomato seeds. Or a tomato seed, I guess. And it's going to be a consumable, although I don't really think it matters. The prefab is going to be that seed prefab. So from here, seed. I'm not going to let the player drop it because we're going to plant it in this dirt. We're not going to drop it and just have it lying around on the ground. So we're going to, it is multiple seeds though, so it's got a bunch. So, and then plant to grow tomatoes. And then I'm also going to make, using rapid icon again, we're just going to make a sprite based off of that prefab. So we'll go to Gridness, Light Farm Pack, prefabs, and then we'll see seed. And the camera, we can move this around. That's fine though. And then export. And export icon. And that will go into this exports directory. And then we need to make this a sprite. Single fly. And we go back to our seed and drag in the sprite. Right, and that's it. So shape, well, let's do max stack of 10. And the price, let's say 100. Or we could do 10. I guess fire gets 100 maybe. So 10, we do 10. And then the merchant can now add that to his stock. So that will be this tomato seed, and we'll give him infinite stock. We'll be able to purchase that. And now we need an actual player. So we're going to bring in from the examples, game creator characters, the player. We'll bring him in over here. Stay here. And put him on the ground. Because we're on a terrain, it's not y equals 1. It's more it's a different height, so we just have to eyeball it this time. Right around 11 is where we are, and then that's it. And we need a camera shot. And we will put the third person camera shot. And it will move the camera with the right mouse button. And sensitivity -1. And I like to turn down the pitch as well. So main shot, and then we want to change the clipping to zoom in. And that should do it. I'm going to put my camera shot up here. I'll put the player up here too, and the merchant. And then we'll be able to buy our seeds. Cool. I'll put the merchant. And what are we missing? We are missing something. Okay, before we can play, we also need an event system. UI, where is it? Event system. Now we'll see if we can get into our inventory screen with no, actually. Oh, right, we brought in the wrong player. That's the problem. That's the problem. Oop. Let's delete that player. It's the inventory examples we want, the prefabs. Player inventory list. That's the one we want, and we want y equals 11. Okay. And now we will see, move that up here. That should work. See if I can get into my inventory first. And yes, we can. And now we'll see what the problem is here. Now it works. Because before it was trying to bring up the screen, but the screen is inside the player. So now it didn't work. So now it works. So the player needs money though, so we're gonna give him some money. So the player needs some currency. We can give him 100 in the currency that comes with the examples. Okay. Now we can buy our seeds up to 10. We should be able to buy 10. And we have 10. We have $0 left. We have our 10 seeds. And now, so that represents the first part of the chain is completed. Next, we want to be able to plant those seeds. Okay, so now we want to get out of play mode. Now we're going to want to be able to plant these seeds. So let me move this over here. We'll rotate it a little bit so that it's just over by itself. We can also make it bigger. Not that way. We can make it just expand it a little bit so it can fit more seeds in it. Okay. So, and we're going to delete those tomato plants for now. And we don't need them right now. So here's where we're going to plant them. And we're going to put some, as we did before, we're going to put markers so that we can plant them. So actually I'm going to take the seed that we had just to see how big it is. And then we're going to be able to plant those and put a marker down, and it'll be a child of the dirt object. So let's create an empty child. Let me unpack that prefab and then create an empty child marker. And we're going to put a marker in it. And then we're just going to put it, we're going to rotate it how we want it to be oriented, how we want the player to. Be oriented when he's planting it. So we have that. Right, so when we instantiate the seeds, it'll come right on there. We don't need the seed, that seed there. We can just sort of create a few just to see how how many is gonna fit. I think 6 would be enough. So now we're just gonna duplicate the marker. We have 5 more markers and just move them into position. 1, 2, 3. And the last one. So we, they don't have to be exact. So now we can get rid of these seeds. And each marker is going to, we also want an interaction point child. We'll create another one in the center, maybe. And we'll put a hotspot on that. And we do it by radius, then the player, as long as the player is anywhere in the middle, it can activate. And then we want to show floating text. And we'll call it that. We will put the interaction tooltip focus at, is the up offset. And then when it gets interacted with on interact, that's when we would plant the thing. So we're just going to put a debug log text there for now. And player plant seeds. And we're not checking anything just yet, so just seeing if the hotspot's working. And yes, it is. Good. Just gonna see if it works anywhere that you're in here, basically. So that's our interaction point. So that will have all of the logic. And the other thing we need to know is a list of all these markers. So we'll create an object for that. And that's going to be, we need a local list variable. And that's going to be references to game objects. And we'll just put all of our markers in there. All right, so we got our markers placed and a reference to them in our local list variable. I want to also make sure that these are above the ground. Oh, yeah, you want them to be bright yellow and not like that, because otherwise the player cannot get to them when you ask the player to go to it, right? So that's that. And then, so on the interaction point, we are going to check a condition. And the player has to have, or whoever interacts with it, we'll call the target, has to have that item. So the item we created called tomato seed has to have 1 tomato seed in his bag. If so, then we're going to go ahead and do the planting. So we're going to stop the player from controlling. Is controllable will become false. And then we're going to sort the list by distance to the player or the target. And the local list is in the list of markers. And closest to farthest. So if the player is here, it'll be this one, depending on which one he's closest to. And then we're going to move the player. Actually, we should probably wait a second or a frame or something like that here, just to let it have time to sort. And then we're going to move the player to the nearest marker. So the location of the markers. First element, because the first element will be the closest one. So it'll move the player to the closest one. And then we're going to play a gesture. And we're going to look in the Kevin Iglesias free pack that we're using in this. So the human animations, we've got, the only farming is a plow thing. So we could see what it looks like and take a look at that. Or we can use the gathering one of these. This one, maybe? Where he's down on his, and then, or that one knee. I guess we'll use gathering 3. So let's do gathering 3. Wait to complete. So once the gathering has been done, we want to instantiate the item. At the target, player position. I guess that's fine, player position. And the item will be the tomato seed. Okay, so we'll instantiate it there, and then we need to remove the item from the player's inventory. And then at that point, it's planted on the ground. So then we can give the player back their control. So we'll just copy this one and say it's controllable again. And that should do it. Should be able to plant our seeds. Okay, so let's buy our seeds. Really only need 6 of this, and then we'll see if this works. Yep, except it instantiated it in the midair. Because that's the player's position. Okay, and then we have a problem. Okay. Oh, yep, we forgot to remove. Once we move the player to that, we also need to remove that from the list. Remove from list. That marker. Otherwise, the player, it will try to go to the same marker all the time, and it won't work. Okay, so instantiating it at the marker's position is better. That would be local list variable. That's this first element's position, and the rotation, we can just do a 0 rotation, either Euler, angles, or quaternion, it doesn't matter. So instantiate it at the first element's position. Hopefully that will work. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Should be able to get all 6. Planted. Now the problem is, if once all 6 are planted, we don't want to be able to plant anymore. Well, the player doesn't have any more seeds, but let's see what happens if the player has another seed. And we try to plant another one, even though they're all planted. It'll still try and plant them, so we don't want that. So we also want to check another condition, that there's at least one marker in that list. So let's the list is empty. If it's not empty, the list of markers. So he has to have one seed, and the list of markers cannot be empty. So that will allow planting. By 7, just to test that out. And we'll try and plant. Now we shouldn't be able to do any more. We have one, so Now nothing will happen when we press E because the local list variable is now empty. So that's good. So we are now to the point where we'll be able to plant seeds. So next we want to be able to have a watering system to be able to water them. So we'll do that next. So now we need to be able to water our seeds and have the crops grow after they've been watered. So this we're gonna have to have the actual tomato plant in its entirety, like the whole system as we want it. So we'll do similar to what the NV3D pack does. We're gonna have we're gonna have a parent object called the tomato plant. And inside this object, we're going to have multiple prefabs. So we're going to take the growth stages prefabs. So first of all, the seeds is the first stage. And then we want plant small, medium, large. No, we don't want the plant tomato small, medium, large. Those are we want this plant small first. And then we want to do a medium. Then we do the tomato small, tomato medium, and tomato large. We've got all these stages, and right now it all looks like this. So this, this is how big it's going to be when it grows. And we need the plant large for the depleted state as well. So this is the stage where it can be harvested. And that is the stage where that one, we're going to have to move it a little bit into the ground. I don't know. It has to be in the same spot. So we'll zero all these out. So the plant is fine, but the seed, we're going to zero out all of these children. This. Okay. Now, yeah, so now we can drag it around. And we're going to unpack this as well. Each one of these I'm going to unpack completely. Wonder if we can do it all at once. We'll see. Yep. So we want all these prefabs so that we can. So now the only one by default that's going to be active is the seed. So when we'll be instantiating this tomato plant instead of the seed prefab that we were using, and then it will instantiate at the marker position. And then each stage of growth, after once it's watered, then it will basically, this will turn itself off, this will turn itself on, and then there'll be a timer on each of these sections to make it grow. So that's how we're going to implement that. So we'll keep seed on, and then we're going to need to make that a prefab. So let's see. Create a folder for prefabs. And we'll drag it in. Then we can delete. And then when this, we're going to do the interaction point. Instead of instantiating this, we're instantiating the item, which is fine. And then the inventory, all we have to do to change which one it is change the prefab that the item points to. So then we're instantiating that instead. Okay, so let's see. Make sure that works first. We'll take a look at the side here as we plant. It's the tomato plant now, so we'll see all the sub objects in it too. Okay, so that works. So now in the tomato plant prefab, we're going to have a hotspot on the seed because we want to be able to water it. So we'll say on interaction focus, and then it will say water. And we'll put it at a constant of up. And prefab would be the tooltip interaction tooltip focus. And then when it's interacted with, how are we going to water it first? So in this pack, we also get a watering can. So if we can take a look at that, I'll move it out here. We have a watering can right here. So we can make this an item that the player can pick up. So we'll create an inventory item. Item called watering can. And it really doesn't need to have a parent, I don't think. The prefab is going to be the same watering can prefab. Water can. The name, okay, watering can. Use this to water your plant, and then we need a sprite, so let's go back to Rapid Icon and get a sprite of the watering can. And export. And we can get it from here. Oh yeah, we have to make it a sprite first. Okay, so we have an item watering can. We will have a max stack of 1, that's fine. We're just going to have it lying around and the player could pick it up. So if we want to do that, we can just leave it in the scene and put a hotspot on the watering can. Player, interaction focus. Pick up, let's say. And we'll put it once and up, and our favorite prefab, this one. And then when we interact it with it, trigger, on interact. Then we want the player to pick it up. So what we'll do is create a little marker. It's always good to have these markers that can put the player where you want them. So marker, and then we will put it here so that the player will rotate near enough to it anyway, and then be able to pick it up. So the marker is there, so we do that. And then we want to, again, turn off this is controllable. Move the player to the marker. Then we're going to add the item watering can to the player's inventory. And now look, the easy way would be just to remove it from the scene. And the hard way is to have the player actually pick it up. So what we want to do, or what we could do is, I'm going to I'm going to put the marker near to the handle, maybe. And then player can pick it up like that. Or we can just have him have it in the inventory and remove it from the scene. So add the water. I'm just going to do the easy way for now. Add instruction, and then game object. Oh, we're going to destroy itself, right? So destroy self, because we're adding it to the player. And then if the player drops it, it'll reinstantiate this anyway. So, but we're going to need this to be a prefab as well. We'll create another prefab so that this should point to the new prefab and not that, the one with the logic on it. This one. That way, when the player puts it down, he'll be able to pick it back up again. So the player is going to pick it up. It's going to destroy itself. What we can do to show the player holding it is there's an event that we can put on the player. We'll put it in the reactions. We'll add a child there on pickup. So here, this event we can use inventory on add. So when something gets added to your inventory, you can do something here. So what we want to do is check conditions. If the player has the item, so let's see, the watering can. So if something gets added and it is the watering can, then we want to instantiate it in the player's hands. Now, if we picked up something else and he had it, I don't know if you can say. Oh, here we go. So instead of doing any, we can say by type and then item, watering can. So if the watering can is added to the player, there's only one in the scene, so there's never going to be more than one. And we can still check if they have it just to make sure. But it should be fine. And then we want to instantiate that item. Attach. Okay. Attach prop. Okay, here we go. Oh, well, we can do this. We'll attach the prefab watering can. Actually, that has all the logic on it. You could either use this one or the one that has no logic, I guess. So we'll attach it in his right hand, and we need to know the position and rotation of it on the player. So what we can do is take a look at the player, the mannequin, and then, oops, we'll go to the right hand, right shoulder, right arm, right forearm, right hand. So we'll just drag it there for now and make it, oh, we can't do that. Doesn't like it. We need to unpack this, that's why. Okay. So now we should be able to, there we go, put it in the right hand. And it's still way over there. So we need to zero that out. And zero out the rotation, just so we know what we're dealing with here. And then we can rotate it how we want it. So that the player will be holding it. We want local. Let's see. Something like this. Anyway, we can get close, or what we think it's going to be, but it's not going to be, you know, it's probably not going to be correct. So what we can do is just go into play mode and see how the player is holding it. And then, yeah, oh wow. It's colliding with the player, I think that's why. Okay. Yeah, let's use a different one. One that does not have a collider on it, I think is best. So we're going to duplicate this watering can, bring it to our prefabs folder. And water can pickup. Okay, so it'll be the one that he's holding just for show. And we're going to remove the mesh collider from it. Just so that when we pick it up, it's not going to interfere with the, let's instantiate that instead. And then we'll see how it holds it. And then we'll rotate it in play mode and get the coordinates for it. So now we should be able to move around with it. Good. But it needs to be, we can do this here. We need to rotate this so that it looks good in the hand. Something like that, I guess. Might be a little bit too big. We might want to, we probably want to, I'm going to maybe rotate it some more. But you can tweak this for a long time, but I want it to point. I want it to point that other direction. So that. I think we're gonna make it smaller though. Just like do it like that. And then it should be smaller, like half the size maybe. So now, but let me, so position 0. Point 0.08. 0.67 minus, let me write it down. And when we out of play mode, we want this to be, let's say 50% the size. That'll probably look better. So 0.08, 0.671, negative 0.156. It's going to be different now. So let's take a look. Let's do it like that, maybe. Put further down. Let's see how that works. Much better. Yeah, much better. So we'll take those coordinates. And when we instantiate it, we'll use those coordinates here. 0.034. The rotation I probably need to get to 0.417, 0.045. We're going to need the rotation value as well. So four, 0.045. Oh, okay, now we need to rotate somehow. Get it right. Actually, that's not the right way of doing it. It needs to be, when he's got his hands out straight, should be like that. Yeah, we're gonna have to do it outside of play mode. rid of that. Okay, so this is negative 180. Point. That's what we'll do. Okay. We'll just try picking it up and we'll adjust it accordingly when that happens. So now, okay, so now I should be able to pick it up. We go over here. Oh yeah, and don't forget to make the player controllable again before you destroy this. Otherwise, the player won't be able to. Markers? Oh, I just said markers, didn't I? Okay. All right, let's try that. There we go. Okay, we're still instantiating the large size one. So that needs to be fixed. And yeah, we're instantiating the wrong one. Okay. Interfering with the. Okay, let's do add watering can to player. Okay. And then this is what we're doing. This water can, we want the pickup version of the water can. There we go. Let's do that. Okay. That one is still 111. I probably forgot to resize it. So let's try that again after we resize that again. Let's try picking it up. All right, so yeah. The other thing we want to do is resize the one on the ground. Otherwise, it just magically gets smaller when it's picked up. So. All right, so we're picking it up. And now we want to water our seeds. Oh, we got to plant a seed first. Then we can water it. But so we go back to our tomato plant. And when the player interacts with the seed that's on the ground, we'll put a trigger in here on interact. And then we're going to check if the player has the watering can. As item. If the player has the one watering can, then we can water the plant. Now, there's no watering animations with the free version of Kevin Iglesias, but I also have the paid version, so this is optional if you don't have it, but if you want, you could use this watering animation. So we're going to do the player is not controllable, and then we're going to turn it back on at the end. And we're going to play a gesture. that would be this watering, right-handed watering animation. And it waits to complete. And then this has now represented the fact that we've watered the plant. Then we can turn off the seed and turn on the small plant. So what we could do is put a wait time on this, wait number of seconds. The other thing I wanted to do here is put a local variable, a local name variable that tells you the growth stage length. So we will create a variable called with a number, and we're going to give it, say, 5 seconds. Represent 5-second stages. So then all we got to do is wait that number, that amount, and then we're going to do the set active of the next stage to true, and we're going to set active of this stage to false, and then that will set off the next stage. And so we're going to change that to there. Okay. Oh, actually, no, we want the player to be controllable as soon as the gesture is done, and then we'll do the rest. The player could be running around. It'll wait 5 seconds, then it'll activate the next stage. So in the next stage, we're going to have just a trigger, on start trigger, and all we're going to do here is wait that amount of seconds. And then we're going to just set active the next stage, medium, and set active, I guess we could say self to false. And then I could basically copy this component, and then on each one of these, we're just going to paste it in. And then all we have to do is change the stage that we're activating. And that so makes it quite easy. And then tomato medium. Tomato large. And then the tomato large, it will stop there because this is where you will harvest it. So the tomato large, we're going to put a hotspot on. And we're going to tell the player that it can be harvested. So harvest, offset. I'm going to put like forward, I think, just so it's in front of the. Well, we may have to tweak that, but tooltip focus. Then when we interact with it, trigger. Then what we're going to do is harvest the tomatoes. And so first of all, we need to know how many tomatoes we're going to get in this plant. And let's just say we're going to get 6 tomatoes. Crop count, let's say. Number. Yeah, we're going to do 6. So that's the max, I guess, max crops. we'll say. And then another one we're going to do is current harvest. We're going to count how many have been currently harvested. And then once it gets to the maximum, then it'll move to the next stage of depleted. Right, so what we're going to do is we need to create a tomato item. So there is a tomato that we can use in this light farm pack. We want the tomato. We can use that. We can use A. We can use A or regular. Let's use the tomato, and we're going to need an icon. So rapid icon will come in for that. I don't know what that's. Render error. Not sure what's going on there. Game object is not a root. Okay, we're inside of a prefab, so that's why it doesn't like it. So we're going to take this tomato prefab and export that. And make that a sprite. Single. There we go. Then we'll create the tomato item. Inventory item. Tomato. And then this one will be that prefab. And we'll just call it tomato. Go. Right. And then we'll say, let's say 10, max stack of 10. Price, we're not going to sell it to the merchant or nor where we're going to buy it from. So that's done. And then what we need, let's get rid of that, is go back into our prefab, I guess. So when we pick it up, or when we harvest it, so is controllable again, turn that off, and then turn it back on. Then we want to play a gesture. Oh, actually, we want to check though first. Let's do a check conditions. Well, I guess we do it afterwards. We could do it afterwards. Let's just, okay, so add interaction. Okay, so we're going to play a gesture. And we're going to do a gathering. I think gathering 01 is in the free pack. So what is you? Yeah, gathering 1. We'll do that. And then we'll add that item to the player's inventory. And then we will deduct 1 from that variable. So numbers, I guess, or increment number -1. Oh, actually, we're incrementing it -1. So local name variable and the current harvest. No, actually, we're adding 1 to it. Sorry about that. Adding 1 to the current harvest. And then we can check to see we're going to compare numbers. Compare integer, I guess. So we're going to compare the two variables. So if the current harvest is greater than or equal to the max harvest, max crops. So then we want to do, we could turn, yeah, we can make the player controllable there. And then what we want to do is, if it is, then we can go to the next stage. And then we will set active the plant large and set our self to false. To false. That should do it. Let's see if it works. And the other thing is, oh yeah, okay, so that's fine. Let's see if it works. Get some seeds. Do one and see. Now it says water. Nothing's happening because I don't have water. That's all flickering, but we've got that. Now we're going to water. The animation does a good job. So, yeah, we've watered it. So now it's growing. We'll see it. See this. It is growing. So as we can see, it's down to the large stage now. So now, we also need a way to, yeah, the harvest thing needs to be fixed, but we need a way to put down the can as well. But let's see. We can harvest it even with it. Then we have, is a tomato. Let's see if we can get 6. E. 5. 6. And then it goes to the next stage. Can no longer do anything with it. So that is successful. Next I'm going to maybe get a way to put that down. And we can just do it from the inventory. So on, say, remove, or on remove. Let's see. There. Trigger. Inventory. On drop item. Requires a collider. Oh, that's not right. Inventory on remove item, and then the watering can. Now we're going to remove or detach, remove the prop, the watering can pickup from the player. That's all we need to do there. On pickup, we're attaching it, and on remove, we are removing it. So that should work. I don't even think we need the check, so let's see if we can do that. Oh, and we need to instantiate it back in the scene too. So it's going to disappear. And then if you want to get rid of it, we can drop it. Oh, it does instantiate, but we don't see it. It needs a rigid body so that or it needs to be on the ground at least. On remove. So yeah, to do that, we're going to be instantiating this item. So what we can do is, it has a collider. I think a rigid body can do it. Rigid body, let's just try that and see if it works. That way I could pick it up and put it down. Except it's not there anymore. What happened to it? Yeah, something's off. Where is it? Why isn't it working? Huh, that's weird. Where'd it go? Concave. Okay, that's why. I added a rigid body to it. It needs to have a concave or a convex collider. That's why. Let's see if that works. There it is. Okay. So now, because it's got a rigid body, I can kick it around, but I can still pick it up. Can I? I need to. No, I need to. Yeah. So what we need to do is disable the rigid body or make it kinematic when we're picking it up. We'll disable the component. Rigid body. No. Wait. Rigid body? Is there a physics thing I can do? Oh. Oh. Make it kinematic. There we go. Equals to true. We're just clicking this on and off. Set is kinematic as true before we try to move to the marker. Let's see if that works. Whoa, no. Wait a sec. Hey, what happened there? Yeah. Oh, okay. So we need that to be over here. While. And then, okay, we did it wrong. Kinematic. Okay. Then apply the override. Okay, so now we got it. And we put it down. Let's see. Drop. And now it's on the ground and we can pick it back up again. Okay, it's a little wonky. The marker needs to be a little bit farther away from it. That's why. So that you're not colliding with it. So that was the problem there. We can set the mass to be some, see, you don't want to be able to kick it. So let's set the mass to something large, like 100 or 1,000. I don't know. 1,000 maybe? Yeah, that way you won't move it. But you can pick it up, and when we put it down, it will fall to the ground. Perfect. And we can't kick it anymore, so that's good. The only thing is you have to come in here and drop it. You could put like a key binding to do that, but I'm not going to do that right now. So we've got our watering system done, and we should be able to do everything. Oh, the other thing I wanted to fix was in here, the wait 5 seconds. We also want to disable the hotspot so that while that 5 seconds is elapsing, disable component from self. And then we can look for the hotspot. Disable the hotspot from self. So we don't want the player to be able to interact with it again once it's been watered. And that should do it. Let's run through the whole scene. Plant our seed. Okay. Now we gotta water it. Okay. Water. Now that hotspot went away, so now it should be, it's gonna grow into tomatoes that we can then harvest. I'm gonna drop this. Okay. And yeah, harvest. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, it's clean. And now we have 6 tomatoes in our inventory. So that is the crop growth and the harvest crops. And now the crop's depleted. So this part of the chain is finished. So next we're going to now take those tomatoes and load them in the crate until it's full, and then we're going to pick it up and take it to a loading zone to finish this off. Okay, so now we're going to start with the next part of this chain, which is to load the fruit in the crate. So back in Unity here, we're going to deal with this crate now. So this crate, we're going to load with tomatoes. Now this tomato is this prefab tomato that it comes in this light farm pack. So this tomato, that when the player drops it, so we have our item here. The player drops it, the prefab is tomato. So when we instantiate the item, it will instantiate this prefab. So what we want to do is see how many of these we could fit in here. So it looks to me like you could probably fit 12, 6 on the bottom and 6 on the top. So I'm just going to see if that will actually fit. And then we'll Just duplicating these with Control D. And yes, we could easily fit 6 or 12 of these in here. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to delete them all. And they're going to be replaced with markers. We're going to put markers in there so that we know where to instantiate them. And so we will create a marker inside the crate. So I'm going to unpack the crate, and then we'll put a crate empty marker. So for each one of these markers, we're going to add a marker component to it. So the direction doesn't really matter too much. We want to make sure that it's lit up. And we can use inwards maybe, and then the radius of 0.1 maybe. So we'll just put it like that. And then for each tomato, we're going to have a marker. I'll create 12 of these. And these are on the bottom of the crate. And then we have some at the top of the crate. Okay, so there's our 12 markers. The crate needs to know as well how many tomatoes can fit inside of it so that it knows when it's full. So we're going to create a local name variable on this crate. And we're going to say is full. Create a variable, a Boolean variable. And we're going to have a max. I don't know what you call it, tomato. Yes. Max tomato. And that will be a number. And we'll set that to 12. So 12 is the maximum it can hold. And once it hits the maximum, and so we also need a current account of what currently is in there. So we have that's 0. So every time we put one in there, we'll increment this. And when it hits the maximum, it will become a full crate. And we will replace it with the full crate. So we're going to swap it out for this other one called tomato crate, which is full. And this one, I'm going to create a variant prefab of this. So I'll just put it in our prefabs folder. Prefab variant. And in this one, we will put a hotspot so that it allows the player to pick it up. Pick up. And up. There we go. So it will allow the player to pick it up. And on interact, we need an on interact trigger. And the interact is going to handle picking up this crate. We'll deal with that after we do. But first, we got to do this crate. So we need a hotspot on this crate to allow the player to put stuff in it. So once the player interacts with it, we want to there we go. Put tomato in crate. Constant up and interaction tooltip focus. There we go. And then on interact, we want to trigger on interact. When the character interacts with it, first we're going to check, does the character have a tomato in their inventory? So first we'll check to see if that's the case. So if the player has the item, and the item is tomato, just has to have one, then we're going to deposit it in there. So what we're going to do also, we need a list of these markers. So what we want to do is create another empty list markers and add a local list variable to that. And that would be a reference to game objects. We're going to put all the markers in here. So we've got 0 through 11. I'll put them here in order. So this allows you to populate the box in the order in which you want it to be done. Marker 4. Six. And now we have all of a list of them anyway, which is good. And then when we interact with it, first of all, we're going to make the player non-controllable again. And we'll turn it on at the end. And then we will instantiate an item. That's the tomato. And the location will be the local list variable first element of the list. And then the rotation can just be 0. Or we can use Euler angles, that's fine. And so 0 rotation. And that's that, so that will go. And then we want to remove the item from the player because so it gets out of the inventory. And we also want to remove that first of the list. Remove from list. And we're going to remove the first element out of the list because we used it. So once it's been used, we'll remove it, move the tomato from the player, and then is controllable back to true. And we can also play a gesture. Let's look at the Kevin Iglesias carry drop. Yeah, there's this carry drop one. If you don't have that one because it's not in the free pack, you can use like one of these gathering ones that is in the free pack, but I'll use this one for now. So we will play that gesture. And we'll do it right here. And that will be this one. And then, okay, so once that's done, the other thing we want to do is increment the current tomatoes count. So we'll do that. Local. Current tomato. And +1. Once we instantiate it. And then we want this to check it against the maximum. And also we want to do another condition, compare bool, compare the boolean, local name variable is full, is false. So we don't want to be able to put anything in there, just to make sure that nothing can be put in there if it is full. But like when it is full, we're not going to be. This thing is going to be gone anyway. So let's put another trigger, and we're going to look for changes to that variable. So on local name variable change, that would be this one. And we're looking for the specific one, current tomato. When that changes, we're going to compare that instruction, check conditions. Yeah, that's what we'll do. And then compare, do an integer. And current tomato greater than or equal to max tomato. So if it comes up to the maximum, then what we want to do is replace this whole prefab. So we want to instantiate and a game object, and that would be the tomato crate. The full version, no, but not that one. We want the prefab, the one that can be picked up, the tomato crate variant. And the position is going to be at the position of this crate. So not the player position, self position, self rotation, and no parenting. And then we want to destroy self so that this will be gone and replaced with this. All right, we will check to see if this works. To make this easier, I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to give the player 12, I guess, tomatoes to put in there. So we can Where's it? Tomatoes. 12 items. So the player should have 12 to start with. That way for testing, we don't have to keep planting and growing and stuff. So if I look, yes, I have 12. And I'll go over here. Put tomato in crate. Okay, so what do we got here? Object must implement iConvertible. That's strange. I wonder what that was. Oh. Okay, we're gonna have to figure this one out. Position rotation. Something to do with the rotation, maybe? Alright, so we figured out what the problem was. And instead of marker, I had I think location was the default. Instantiate location, which requires the position, rotation, but it works when you use navigation marker, right? So we were instantiating the item at a marker. So the marker is going to be the local list variable, list of markers, first element. So that fixes that error that we were having. And so let's see, now it should work. Sometimes those instantiate commands can be work a little weird, or you have to get the right parameters in order for it to work. So let's put the tomato in the crate. So now we can see we're getting tomatoes in the crate. Once we put all 12 in, it will become the other crate. And it has the pickup. Now there is no logic on the pickup now, but now we have so notice we have all of these tomato clones in the scene if we look at them here. So if we were to move that crate, there's the crate. There's our tomatoes, right? So they're still there because they weren't parented to the crate, so we need to parent it to the crate when we put them at the marker. So that is one little glitch. So that's what we'll do. Set parent of last item instantiated. And the parent will be self. So right there. So once it'll be parented to the crate. And the other problem was if the crate becomes full, it will destroy the self, but then the player will not be controllable because it will have the increment is before that. So what we need to do is have this is controllable, needs to be farther up, like right there at the gesture, I think it would be better. And then it should work. So let's test that out. And we'll see if we get those 12. Okay, oh, there's our new crate. And now we don't have those tomatoes and we can still run around. So that's good. So if we move this around, there's no extra tomatoes lying around, so that fixes that problem. So now we are finished the crate full box. So now the next step is getting our player to pick this crate up and take it to a loading zone. So first of all, we need a loading zone in order to put the crate in. So I guess we can create that. Let's create one over here. And for that, we can just put, let's see what prefabs we have in the Light Farm Pack that we could possibly use here. There's this grass thing here. Grass ground, maybe that one. We can just have it here and just we'll just rotate it, and that'll be our loading zone there, and then we'll have a hot spot on there. And we will show the text, load goods or something like that, produce here, and we'll put that at vector up, and then our favorite prefab, interaction tooltip focus. So we will load that in here. So we'll also do an interaction trigger, and we'll figure out the logic after we get to that point where the player is carrying the thing. Actually, I'm going to put the interaction stuff on a sub. This is we're actually in play mode, so we don't want to do that. Let's put that over here again. Put it there. Yeah, we're gonna unpack that, and we're gonna put a child object, interaction point object. This way we can control exactly where on this object the player can interact with it. So instead of in the middle, you can put it right here, near the edge. So when the player gets near to the edge, it can interact with it there. So we'll put our hotspot on here. Loading zone. Let's just say loading zone up, and the interaction focus. Trigger on interaction, and then player will drop the crate. Okay. If he has it. So we're gonna need to check if the player is carrying it, this crate as well. But we'll deal with that once we get the player picking up the crate. So that's next. We're going to get the player to pick up this crate. So to be able to pick this up, we want this to be an item that the player can carry. The full one is, not this one. But the tomato crate variant, which is the full version, that's going to be on the ground. it will have the hotspot for picking up. And so what we want to do is add this to the inventory as an item, so it shows up in your inventory. So let's create that. We'll create that item first. Tomato crate. And the prefab is this one. We're not going to allow the player to drop it, though. Yeah, we're not going to allow the player to drop it because the player will drop it only when it goes over there to the interaction point where it's supposed to be dropped off. For the purposes of this demo, anyway. Where you could have a can drop, you could allow the player to drop it out of their inventory, but then you'd need to put a rigid body on it and all that. So, or you could have multiple points where you could, interaction points where you could put down the crate if you wanted to allow that. But I'm not going to do that here. We're just going to carry it over and put it there. So first of all, we have this item, tomato crate. It's full and ready to go to the drop-off point. And then we need a sprite. So that's where rapid icon comes in. We will make a sprite of this full crate. And then that will be, oh yeah, and we have to create that as a sprite. Single apply and tomato crate. Okay. And shape, just one max stack. We're not going to be buying and selling it. That's the other thing you could do is be able to take it to the vendor and sell it. But we're not going to do that here. And that's really all we need there. And then on the crate variant prefab. So now when the player picks it up, we're going to play a gesture. First of all, is controllable is off because we're going to play a gesture. And there is in this Kevin Iglesias Human Animations pack, there is a pickup animation which we'll use. And then there's a carry idle. If we look at that actually, this is like the beginning of picking up something. And then this is picking up, it is showing you that the player is just standing there holding it. And then this is the drop animation, putting it back down. So we're going to use the pickup one when we pick this up. Okay, so go back to the prefab. There's that. Oh, down here. Okay, so the gesture, and we have to go back to this one, pickup gesture. And that's it. And what we want, and then we'll turn the controllability back on for the player. And then we want to add the item to the player's inventory. So here, inventory, tomato crate. And we're just going to destroy this item the full crate variant. So it'll be in the player's inventory. So next, we want to show the player physically carrying it. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a state for carrying. So I'm going to create a folder called states. So an animation state. We'll create a new state. Characters, animation state. And why it does that sometimes, I don't know. Let's see. Animation state, and now we're going to call this carrying. So it'll be the carrying state. The state clip is going to be the carrying idle. And for this one, because we want the player to be able to walk around with this being carried, we need to use an avatar mask. So we need an avatar mask. Luckily, Kevin Iglesias actually provides you with avatar masks as well. So in his human animations pack, there's avatar masks, and we have a human body upper mask. So all we have to do is drag that in there. And if we want to look at it, this is what it looks like. Everything on the bottom is turned off so that only the top part of the player is affected when that state is being played. When I go into this carrying state, it will show the player carrying, but then the upper mask will allow us to walk around. So if we want to test that out, we can just temporarily put the player in that state just from default. So what you can do is we go to animation, the start state. So if we want to just test how it's going to work, we can put him into the carrying state when we go into play mode, and then we'll see how it works. So now he's in that carrying idle, but we should still be able to walk around. So this is how we're going to want to carry that crate around. So yeah, that'll work for us. And then when we bring it over here, it will drop whatever's in there and take it out of the inventory, actually. So that is this carrying state. So let's go back to our prefab. So we want that is done. So once the player picks it up and goes into his inventory, we can monitor that with like a reaction on here, like an on pickup reaction, like we did with the watering can. What we can do is have a different on add trigger. So like I can do another empty on pickup crate, for instance, and just do as trigger on add by type. So once the player picks that up, the tomato crate, then we want the player to enter that state. First of all, okay, search for state, enter the state. And that would be the carrying state. And let's just do layer 2. And then, I don't know if we didn't use a state here, but if you're using other states, you can put different layers. So the player is going to be carrying something, and we need to instantiate something for him to carry. So what we're going to do is instantiate or attach as a prop on the player. The bone will be on the chest. So we'll do the chest. And then we're going to need an offset, but first of all, and then the prop we're going to use is the original prefab tomato crate, because we don't want the one with the hotspot on it to be, because the heat, we'd have to like deactivate the hotspot and all that. So it's easier just to have another clone, another like, prop for when he's carrying it around. So we'll do that and then state carrying in that order. So let's try it. We can actually just put this in our scene and see if the player can pick it up. There we go. Now we need to change where that is on the player. So let's take a look. There it is. So if we move that a little bit, it's pretty big too, so we could always reduce the size of this. So that's what we're going to do, I think. Just for when he's carrying it around. It's pretty big. So. But if we use this offset 0.569 in the Z, we'll see if that fixes it. That would be here. 0.569. And see if that fixes it. And there we go. We are carrying it around. So next thing would be to drop it off. So now we need to drop the crate once we're holding it. So the grass ground area, I think that's where is it? Under the interaction point. We just need to drop the crate and back onto the ground here. And we can put another marker, like a loading point marker. So we will put it right there, say, and have it be a marker and type inwards. That should be fine. So now we want to check if the player is carrying that crate, if the player has the crate in the inventory. Then we can instantiate that item That's the crate. And the location is going to be at that marker. And the marker is the loading points. And then we remove it from the player's inventory. And we also need to stop the state. Otherwise, we'll look like we're carrying it around. And it's layer 2, so we'll stop the state. And the other thing we can do is play that gesture, which is the carry drop 1 gesture. And we'll do that first. And of course, we need to make the player non-controllable again. And turn it back on afterwards. And let's see what that does. Okay. Okay. And what we need to do is not just remove it, but we need to drop or detach the prop. We remove the prop from the player as well. So that prop was that prefab tomato crate. So we need to remove that. We can do it. I don't know which order you want to do it, but it can be done either way, I think. Okay, so let's pick it up. Drop it down. Okay, and then, okay, we're still in the state. For some reason, didn't stop the state. And, well, we don't have it in our inventory. Oh, you know why? Because we still have it as our start state. So let's see if that fixes it. There we go, back to normal. And then could pick it up again. Carry it anywhere we want. And then the only place you can put it down now is the loading zone. So there we go, we are picking up. So the last thing to do, I guess, is to run through the entire chain to see if it all works. And so we're going to delete this from the scene. And we're going to remove those items from the player. So no more free tomatoes. So let's see if we can just do the whole chain. We'll buy our seeds. And we're only going to need a few. Okay. And then we will plant them. The field. Good. So we need to water them, but we don't have the watering can, so we need to pick that up. We'll water these so they start growing. Okay, so now we don't need the watering can anymore. We can drop that. And we'll wait for our tomatoes. There's some tomato. Yeah, the harvest tool thing needs to be fixed. It's a little bit further away than we thought, so the offset for that needs to be fixed. But what we can do is that we have our prefabs here. Tomato plants. This is where that hotspot is. So show harvest. The offset is forward. So instead, you can specify an offset once it is. Well, we can just drag one into the world and turn it on, see what we would need. Let's do that. What we're going to do is turn that on, turn this off, just to see where that offset needs to go. I'm not sure if we can change it at runtime like that. Let's see. Yes, we can, see? We can move it around and right there, maybe. It's a billboard, so it'll always face the camera. So let's move it maybe 0 there. And then Y1 and Z maybe 0.5. The Y1 Z 0.5 looks pretty good. And we can harvest it. So let's just update that. 1. And we're editing this version. So we want to put it back to being a seed. And then we want to apply that override so that that change we made propagates to the actual prefab. And now it should look better. Okay. Water these. Here, and then the harvest looks better. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess we need 12. Okay, we have 12. Now we can put them in the crates. Okay, pick it up. We can carry it and drop it on the loading zone. But the chain is complete. Now, there are things we can fix with this, like if you're picking up something and instead of picking it up from there, you can put a marker there. So let's see. So this prefab here, if you added a marker to this prefab, so let's create that. So what you could do is just have it like right there, right where you want the player to face when he's picking it up. We have the marker. So then, before you do the gesture, you can do move to. Move player to this marker. And then it should work. And so to test that, we're just going to move this here. If we go here, it should move around to the other side first, and then pick it up. So that can be done with just about anything in Game Creator 2, like anything you want to interact with. You can usually move the player to a marker first. This is what this prefab does with the merchant. It will move the player to a marker that's right in front of the merchant. So if I press E, the player moves there first, then goes there. So that's just a standard technique in Game Creator 2. We could put one here. I could put one in front of the... Well, that one wouldn't really need to. I could put one in front, like when we're harvesting as well, in front of every one of those, the crop prefab as well. But I think we get the idea anyway, and you could do that yourself on your own. And we stop the play mode. So that's it for this chain of farming. So that's it for this video. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. You can join the Patreon if you want to support the channel, or you could use one of my affiliate links below to purchase Game Creator 2 or any of the other products listed below. It helps out the channel. I'm not sponsored by anyone, so the affiliate links definitely help if you happen to buy any of these assets that you see being used that are, well, not free ones. But anyway, thanks to all of my patrons on Patreon. Your support is much appreciated. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you again next time for another Game Creator 2 tutorial. So until then, we'll see you in the next one.